By bringing in a template image as a reference for drawing our Hawaiian shirt. There's a couple of ways to do it. We can create the page first by going File, New, or we could say New from Template, which would bring that file in, create a page for us, and embed the image automatically. I want to create the page first, because I want to tell it that we're going to use a print workflow and we're going to use a tabloid sized page. So that's 11 by 17 inches. There's our page. And now I'm going to use the File Place command to bring in our reference image. There's my Hawaiian shirt JPEG sitting on my desktop, and I'm going to place that. Now remember, if you drag, you can control the scaling. So I've dragged it there. That's my shirt. I want to lock this layer down now. So there's my layers panel. Double click right here. And for the options, I want to set it up as a template. Notice that it dims it to 50%, and you can see by the icon it's locked down. Now that means this layer is locked and we need to create a new one on which we can draw. And I'll just double click the name and we'll just call it Draw Layer. And I can make it a custom color if I want. I'll use some deep purple. Make it a little bit darker. And I've created a custom highlight color for my draw layer. The draw layer needs to be active so that any objects that I create will be generated on that layer. Now, to start the drawing process, you've got to look at this object, deconstruct it into its constituent shapes. So I'm looking at this thing, and it's a collection of, as far as I can see, some triangles in the shirt lapels, rectangles for the body of the shirt, and then really organic shapes. And I'm looking at this thinking, I'm probably either going to use the pen tool or the pencil tool for a lot of this curvature that I'm seeing in the collar and the sleeves and so on. Now, the other thing you need to do is think about the order in which you're going to draw. Typically, you want to draw from the back forward. So if I think about the backmost object here, it's really the inside of the shirt. So I'm going to draw that inside, and I don't really have to worry about what it looks like because the other elements, like the collar, are going to define the contours, like the inside edge of the collar, the outer edges of these collar elements are all going to give shape to this right here. So let me just start drawing. I'll just use the rectangle tool. Let's bring my tools close by. The rectangle tool, you're probably wondering, why am I going to draw this inside area using a rectangle? I just want to illustrate that it doesn't really matter because this shape's going to be occluded or hidden by the other shapes, and it will take its form based on those other shapes. You'll see what I mean in a second. So first off, I'm going to choose a base color, and I want to have my color swatches handy. So there's my swatch panel. I'll just tear that off. I've accidentally created a little rectangle here, so I'm going to hold down the Command key to get my selection tool, select that element, and hit delete. Now that I got my swatch panel, I can mix up some custom colors for my Hawaiian shirt, and I can add these things into a swatch. And I can give it a name, like deep purple. And you'll notice that it adds it in here into the swatch. If the swatches are too small, you can use the Flyaway menu here, and you can ask for a large thumbnail view, in which case it gives you much larger swatch palettes to work with. I'm just going to mix some other colors that I think would look nice in a Hawaiian shirt. I'll just call that canary. Use that green. Hit a new swatch. We'll call that leafy. And maybe a light blue. And we'll create a new swatch for that, and we'll call that sky, and so on. Again, you can create all these custom color swatches, or you can just mix the color on the fly. So I'm going to take this, and my shirt is going to be this purple color. So I fill it in the purple. And that's me. I've created that back layer. I now need to add a pattern to it. So I'm going to make a copy of it. Command-C or Edit Copy. Command-C makes a copy. Now remember, it can't read your mind. You have to select the object that you want to copy. I'm just going to remove the stroke from the object for the time being. So I select the stroke, click here for none, and I'm going to make a copy. So Command-C makes a copy. And if I do Command-F, I'm just going to expand my layers palette here. If I do Command-F, it pastes a copy directly on top of the original. Now this one that I've got on top, I'm going to fill with a pattern. Now I'm not going to make the pattern. We've already gone through that process before. So I'm just going to use a canned pattern that happens to be already here. So I add that pattern. So I'm creating a sandwich, kind of. I'm also going to make a third copy, and I'll show you how to do this from the Layers panel. I'm going to select this bottom one, grab the indicator icon, that's the little rectangle here, hold down the Option key, and I drag, and it generates a copy. This copy, I'm going to change its color to white. Then I'm going to use the Appearance palette. So let's get the Appearance panel up here. There it is. Just tear that off, collapse the others. I'm going to use the Appearance palette. Now you'll notice I have the white swatch selected. In the Appearance palette, I'm going to change the opacity of that object. Notice I could change the opacity of the stroke or the opacity of the fill separately, but I'm going to change the opacity of the entire object in one go. I'm going to change it to, I'm going to try some different things like screen, overlay. Well, that's interesting. I think I'm going to go with screen. But I'm going to set the transparency fairly low. Now what I've done here, let's take a look at our layers. I've got the underlying purple of my shirt. Then I've applied the pattern. And remember, where there's negative space in the pattern, we see the underlying purple rectangle. And then on top, I put a white square, and I use the Appearance palette to set the object's opacity to screen at around 64%. Why did I do that? Well, I'm just going to switch all this off for a second. Switch that layer off. This is the underside of the fabric. And you know that sometimes when you have these woven fabrics, that the interior fabric has that kind of white patina to it. It's where the fibers are showing. And so you've got the print on this side, and you've got the substrate showing through on this side. So I wanted to kind of mimic that effect a little bit, and so that's what I've done. Now I'm going to bring these things back so I can change the visibility of the layer, and those elements have been brought back. Now if I want to get them out of the way for the time being, I can hide the individual objects from the Layers palette just by clicking here. and we can hide them. And I can go back to this layer and continue drawing. Now I'm going to start drawing the back collar. I'll just use the pencil tool for that because it's really simple to use. And I can start here, draw over here, go to here, come down here, and finish it off there. That's the collar component. That one, I'm going to fill in the purple again. Now I need to copy it. Command C, you can see it here. Command C, Command F. We've now got a copy that we're going to fill with that pattern. Now, in this case, I'm going to make a copy of that. Remember how we do it from the Layers palette. Hold the Option key down, drag a copy. I could use Command C and Command F. I've dragged a copy, so we've kind of got a sandwich here. And this one, I'm going to make black. And I'm going to use the Appearance palette, and I'm going to set the opacity of that to multiply. And set the opacity down to around 50%. Now, why did I do that? Well, because, let me just hide these things. This is an interior space, and it's entirely conceivable that this collar area would be slightly darker than the things out here catching the full light. So I make it slightly darker because what I'm trying to do is create the illusion of depth and substance. So let's continue. I've drawn this part of the collar. I'm now going to draw this component, and I'm going to use the pen tool for that. So I'm going to start drawing with my pen tool. I've got to make sure my layer is visible, and I can hide those other components. So using the pen tool, I'm just going to create this portion of the collar. And I need to go to Command Y. And Command Y just allows me to see it in outline mode. And there's that part of the collar. And again, I can copy that. I want to fill it with the purple. And then I need to select it with the selection tool because I want the entire thing selected. If I'm using the direct selection tool and I copy and I paste, you'll notice that I only copied that portion of the path that I had selected. So I don't want to do that by mistake. Use the selection tool. Remember that's no matter what tool you're on, by pressing V, that's your shortcut to get to the selection tool. So it's filled in purple. Again, I'm going to make a copy of it. Command C, Command F. I'll apply the pattern to it. And let's bring the visibility of, well, we'll draw another section first. So again, back to the pen tool. And I'm going to start here. And it kind of goes here, then down to about here, then over to here. And again, I follow that same process. Fill it in. Now, if it helps, you can label things so that you're keeping track. You know, right upper collar, right lower collar, left upper collar, left lower collar, that sort of thing, just to help you with that. Okay, so I've got this thing selected, and I want to duplicate it. Remember, Command C to copy, Command F to paste in front, or we simply Option and drag it. Oh, having an issue here with that. There we go. I created a copy through option dragging, and I'll fill that with the pattern as well. Let's just check in by going Command Y and taking a look. Let's make everything visible again. And you can see how this thing is starting to construct itself. Notice I was able to use a rectangle because this shape, and this shape are what are giving this thing form. We don't see its edges because they're all hidden edges. Now I've kind of jumped ahead of myself here. I really should have been drawing this panel right here, but that's fine. I can go back to this position here on my layers palette, and I can start to draw. So I'll start to construct just this panel here. You'll notice that it's defaulting to filling in with the pattern. That's fine. I can take that, which I just drew, and just going to move it up there a little bit. So that's the body of the shirt. Again, fill it in the purple, select it, option drag to make a duplicate. Oops, Command Z. There we go. Why is that? That's weird. See, the icon hasn't refreshed its content yet, which is really awkward. So I'm just going to do Command C, Command V, and then this, sorry, not Command V, Command Z, Command F to paste in front, and then I'll fill that with the purple. Again, Command Y, just so I can start to create the other parts. I'm going to create this little, it's called an epaulette. It's just this part at the top of the shoulder. And again, I'll take that piece, fill it in the purple. So I can take that element. There it is right there. And with that selected, hold down the option key, drag to make a copy, fill the copy with the pattern, and we're good to go. Now, I'm going to create the sleeve. So again, I'm just going to hide all the elements for now, except for the reference drawing. And I'm going to create this last part of the sleeve. Now, it actually starts down here, and it's got a little bit of curvature there. So again, the pencil tool would be nice for this. It's going to start here. And remember, you can use the option key to smooth this out. I've created it. Option key allows me to smooth it, provided you set that up in your parameters. So there you go. I can use the direct selection key to make little tweaks to the positions of the points. Again, I can make all those little adjustments. And there we have the sleeve. So again, I can select that, fill it with the purple. There it is right there. make a copy. Either way, Command C, Command F, or Option dragging a copy like that. Fill it with the pattern, and we're done. So I've done 1/2 of the shirt. Let's take a look. Command Y. Let's bring everything in here. There's all the elements. Now the problem is you can't distinguish the collar areas from the body of the shirt because all the patterns line up. So we saw this when we were doing pattern creation. We can create a duplicate of a pattern. So I'm going to take this foliage pattern and highlight it and then make a duplicate. Oh, sorry. Drag it down here and duplicate it. So there's the duplicate copy. And now, with this duplicate, I can double click on it and edit it. So I'm now in the pattern editor for that second duplicate copy. And I'm just going to switch this off where it says Move Tile with Art. And now I can select all that artwork and just offset it slightly. So we have the pattern there. And now I can signify that I'm done. So I click here, done. And now if I select, say, the collar elements right here, hold the Shift key down and select this, I can ask it to apply this pattern. And it applies a different pattern. Now, I've got to take a look at my layers because it would seem that the collar layers are hidden behind the body layer. So I need to move those layers down. So if I just take a look, so you see those layers right there and there. Let's just call this body base right. And this is body base, body pattern right. So naming them, once you've got a lot of layers and objects, naming strategies become really important so you don't get confused. So I can take this and move that layer down. Select that and move it down. I've gone a little too far. Let's move it up in front of that area there. And you can see where the pattern's disjointed. So you'll notice right here and right here, the pattern doesn't match, but it's still not enough. So what else can I do to help me in that? So I'm just going to call this right collar base, right collar, and that's the upper collar. And then right below that is this element, and that's the right collar lower base. So this thing right here, I'm going to make a copy of the two of them. So I select it, I'm going to make a copy, and Command F. And this one that I've got on the bottom, on the very bottom here, I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. So I'm just going to nudge it out the way, just so it creates this. And I can do the same thing here. With the upper. I'll copy that, Command C, Command F, select the lower one, and just pull that out just a little bit, just like that. So I'm going to take both of those elements and make them really dark. So you'll notice my color palette here. I can make them much darker so we get a nice crisp edge being defined. And then I'm going to use the appearance palette once again to define an opacity blend mode of multiply. And I'm just going to drop the opacity level down to about 65%. And what I want you to notice is that it's blending with the color underneath, like a true shadow. There's one more thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to put a slight blur on it. While I've got those two objects selected, here's the appearance palette, I'm going to use the effects menu, and I'm going to choose a blur, Gaussian blur, preview, and blur it slightly. Now right now it's at 10 pixels. I want that shadow. If the object's really far from the underlying object, you use a lot of blur because the shadow dissipates. But if the object is fairly close, you want a relatively tight shadow with a well-defined edge. So I'm using about 3.5 pixels for that. I click OK. And now we have a nicely defined collar with that shadow. The other thing that I want to do is, I'm just noticing that I can see through here. There seems to be a bit of an artifact there. That's weird. I'll have to see about fixing that. There we go. Okay, so it was an artifact. Sometimes you'll get that on the screen. You'll get an artifact and it's showing you something that actually isn't there. Okay, so now I'm just going to adjust these shadows. So I want to tuck this in, and I need to use the direct selection tool. So this gives me access to individual points that I can then move in this shadow, just like this. And then I want this shadow over here. Now, as this end of the collar gets close to the edge of the fabric, there's less and less shadow because eventually they're touching. So we lessen the shadow as it moves in. That makes sense, right? As the collar flares out, it's a little higher on there. So you can adjust that until you feel that that's representative of that reality. And again, with the direct selection tool, I can select individual points and make adjustments. Spacebar to get my grabber hand and move over. Okay, the same thing is true here. There's my shadow. I notice that my epaulette is in front, so I need to change the layering order. So I'll bring that down. There we go. And I'm going to have to zoom out and zoom in to see that. And I still need to make a slight adjustment on where that is. There we go. Okay, so we've got it. Now the shadow's still got to come up relative to that. So let me just move that shadow detail. There we go. Okay, so I've got everything in the proper layering sequence. And again, I'm just going to adjust that point. Just move it up into here. I don't want the shadow spilling out there, so I've got to pull it back a little bit. And there you have it. we've added some shadow to that collar. Command 0 to zoom out, and you can see that we've got half of that shirt constructed already. It would also be helpful if I selected this pattern here for the sleeve and applied the other pattern, just so we get a mismatch. That makes it more realistic. So if you look at it here, you see how this section is mismatching. Again, I need to make a slight adjustment in areas like down here. Make sure that those things align properly. And that looks better already. I now just have to complete the other side, basically following the same protocol, layer by layer. And I can just use my layers palette to hide everything in the interim. So there we go. And I'm just going to start creating the left-hand side. Again, I'll use the pencil tool. So P. Oh. There we go, pencil tool. And I'm just going to draw this bottom section. Actually, you know what, I'm going to switch that to the pen tool, V, and, oh sorry, P for pen. I had my caps lock key down there, so it was throwing me off. I'm just going to create this little section very quickly, right here. In fact, I don't care what this part looks like, because it's all going to be covered up for the most part, except for this edge right here. And again, space bar to get the grabber hand, move up to here and here. The sleeve is eventually going to cover this, so I'm not too worried about what it looks like. Command, just to move this point down here a bit, and this point down here a bit. Fill it with the purple, and then from the layers palette, we can select that. There it is there. Command C, Command F. Fill it with the pattern. There we go. And now we can hide those two elements. Again with the pen tool. I just want to create this section here for the epaulette. Fill that with purple. So it's selected, Command C, Command F, fill that with the pattern. Command Z. Notice I had the direct selection tool and I only copied that small section. So that's a danger. You got to be aware of that. So make sure you have the entire thing selected, not just one little piece. So you select that with the selection tool. Command C, Command F, fill that with the pattern, and now hide those elements. Now I want to draw the sleeve. I'll use the pencil tool for that. Again, I can use the smoothing function. When I hold the Option key down after I've drawn this section. If I hold the Shift key down, it will constrain drawing to a straight line with the pencil tool. Then I finish that off. Option key gives me the smoothing function. Sometimes you're just going to need to delete some points, and that's fine too. If you can't smooth them out, you would go to your pen tool suite and use the delete anchor point tool or the minus key. Whoop, Command Z, click on a point, and it removes it just like that. Then you can use your direct selection tool and make minor edits to curvature by grabbing the handles. And there you have it. So again, make sure the entire object is selected. There it is. And Command C, Command F. The bottom one we want painted purple. This top one we want it filled with the pattern. Finally, we want to do the collar elements. Basically what we did on the right hand side. And I'm just going to use the pen tool for that. P for pen. There's one color element, purple. Let's select the entire thing. Command C, Command F, fill that with the pattern. Okay, now I can hide those elements. I'll draw this section here. And fill that with purple. Make sure the entire thing is selected. Command C, Command F, fill it with the pattern. So let's take a look at what we have so far. Command Y to preview, and then we make everything visible. Again, it'd be really handy if we alternated the pattern. No, I'm still on my pen tool here. Be sure that you're on the appropriate tool. So I've got the selection tool here. You might even want to make a third version of the pattern. So I could take this one, make a duplicate of it, double click that, get into my pattern editor, make sure Move Tile with Art is switched off, and then I can select all of that artwork. Command A to select it all, and then move it. I'm just going to move it over here now. Click Done. And now I can select this and apply that third pattern. Select this pattern and apply that pattern. So I'm getting some varied results here. And that's all helping to craft that illusion. Final drop shadows, I'm going to put some in here. So I need to locate that element. There's the indicator there. I'm going to make a copy of this version. Command C. I can do Command B and it makes a copy in the back. And then I can make that much darker. That copy. And then I can kind of offset it just so I can see it. Again, I need to do that for down here. So Command, click on there just so I can locate it in my layers palette. There it is. There's the piece underneath. I select it. Command C, Command B. It's put a piece underneath, and I can just offset it. And then I can just use I for my eyedropper and select it so it has the same coloration. Now that I got them, I select both of those shadow details and go to my appearance palette. Well, I've kind of lost my appearance palette, but that's fine. I can go Window, Appearance, and there it is. So use my appearance palette once again to set those two objects that I have selected, set their opacity to multiply, and then I think I had that set. You know what? I can just use the sampling tool. Now that I have them both selected, I'll just use that tool and sample it, and it sets them up exactly the same. The only thing it didn't sample was the effect. Now, I can go in and apply the effect manually here in the Effects menu, or if I double-click the sampling tool, I can determine what exactly it samples. And if I say, look, pick up and apply the appearance as well, then if I've got them selected and I click on this, it also applies whatever was in the appearance menu. In this case, a Gaussian blur. So now it's applied everything. Back to my direct selection tool, and I'm just going to tweak where the shadow details are. Just going to pull that in here. There. Pull that into about here. And then likewise up here. Just a little adjustment. And so we've added some shadow detail to the shirt. Next, we'll be looking at how to create the label.